Here we are, guys. Welcome back to the Escape 9 to 5 Club and welcome to another interview here in our tribe. Today, we're going to talk about, as you can see from, or as you saw from the thumbnail, we're going to talk about how to escape your 9 to 5 in case you are in that situation and you want to become more flexible with your time and location independent. We're going to talk about how the guest that I have today escaped his 9 to 5 and created a profitable and successful business. You're going to be excited. You should be excited about this because the speaker I have today is an incredible, I can say that he's a LinkedIn influencer because he helps a lot of people on LinkedIn. He talks to a lot of people on LinkedIn. He shares a lot of value and content on LinkedIn, and not just LinkedIn because he's a speaker. He's a sales coach. He's a speaker, as I said, and he helps coaches, consultants, and content creators and entrepreneurs to get clients and master sales. So I'm gonna bring him on here in the interview. I want you to welcome with me Richard Moore. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Thank you so much, Alessandro. I'm really excited to be here. And I was just saying to you, this is a topic that's often one question in an interview. So I'm really looking forward to spending an hour here, really getting into this and trying to be as useful as possible. It was over a decade ago I pivoted out of my job, and so there's a lot of lessons in that. Thank you for having me, though. It's a great way of ending our week.
No, thank you so much for being here on board. I have so many questions. Look, just to be honest, when I was writing down the list of questions that I would like to ask you, I came up with around 20 questions. And then I said to
Okay.
myself, we can't stay here for 3 hours. So I have to just pick the questions that I like. And by the way, this is live. So guys, if you want to ask any questions to Richard, just write them in the comments. I'm gonna take a look at them. And if there is something that is interesting to pick up, I will definitely ask this question to Richard. So I just picked, I think, the most important questions to ask you, but I would like you to start with this. I would like you to start with your story because we're here to talk about your journey. So please
Yeah.
tell me, first of all, what you're doing right now. I already told everyone that you help entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, but please be my guest and explain more into details what you're doing.
Thank you so much. So right now I focus on conversion and selling elegantly. And as you rightly pointed out, my vehicle, for the time being at least, and for 7 years so far, has been very much a LinkedIn focus. So helping businesses, small and large, to understand the nuance of interaction with potential buyers, to move them from maybe just looking at their content to actually signing deals. Rather than just attention, my thing is, what do we need to say? What behavior and psychology do we need to understand in order to get that person to want to step forward and interact with us? And then how do you elegantly move that to a meeting or a call and a sale without annoying them or being irritating or being salesy? And simultaneously, I'm running, as you've put in my title, my Art of Sell group, which is a community that focuses on education in selling, because the truth is that it needs work selling, doesn't it? It's got a bit of a bad name, and so I want to bring that, again, that elegance to it, so people don't feel they have to become someone they don't want to. They learn the art of doing it in the right way. It's a communication focus, and there's myriad other things I'm doing, but they're kind of front and center, and I'm really enjoying the kind of the design of my life at the moment, being focused on this thing, because it's just been my world for the past couple of decades.
That's amazing. Well, so now that we have a better picture of what you do right now, let's start with, a long time ago when you weren't the expert you are right now and you weren't doing what you're doing right now. I want to basically, I think that we were talking before starting this interview, and we have different ideas on how to quit a
Yes.
job that you may have right now, how to quit that and start your own business. So I would like you to explain what you've done and include mistakes that you've done, things that you will do better, like what happened when you were in your job and you wanted to start your own business.
Yeah, so Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and you're right. Like, there's a number of different ways to do this. There's many people watching this will be thinking, I'm in a job and I'm considering moving, or it's there's like a little itch they feel they need to scratch. I want to move on and do my own thing, and I want to leave it. But then there'll be other people who are like, I don't feel any urge to do that at all. Or there'll be some people who are like, I hate this, this is awful. And so there's a whole different spectrum there. What happened for me was I did a zero transition move out of 9 to 5. So I had a 9 to 5, then I handed in my notice, and I started my thing straight after. There was no warm up. I didn't do like a year of side hustle to kind of give myself runway. And I think that is a really important thing for people to consider. The one thing I knew was that I backed myself to be able to sell stuff, because that had been my job for a decade before. So for 10 years, it had been selling was my job, and then managing teams and training teams to sell. And then ultimately as a sales director. And it was my wife who was like, look, there's one thing you can do. It's probably make money. You just got to find something to sell. So this question of like, are we going to make ends meet? It's always there a bit, but I did think no matter how bad it looks or whatever, I know I can go make money. That will be my focus rather than something else. And I feel like it's like you talk about things like mistakes and considerations and so on. It's really important for people to audit who they probably are. I think that's the question to ask yourself. Who are you probably? What I mean by that is, are you the type that's going to shy away from the primary thing your early business needs, which is cash flow? It may not look pretty, but you need to get customers at the start. Otherwise, there's a major concern, because how are you going to make ends meet? Unless you've got the luxury of a runway in the form of savings. Even then, everyone with savings will know they'd rather not use their savings. They'd rather keep them intact, right? So it's so important to ask yourself, who am I probably going to be when I do this? And I think what's interesting in that is that you can have a real conversation with yourself, like, of how much am I the type to sit tinkering with my service and product and making a thing, but not get out there in public. And I'm raising this because for me, it wasn't that it was easy, but it was the natural inclination to focus on, where's my first deal coming from? That was how I woke up in the morning, because that's how
Mm,
I'd been trained, because it was my world. And even now, I'm like, every day, where's my next deal coming from? And I appreciate there's all the other parts to my world now, but I still lead with that. It's how I've built myself. That's not necessarily how a business should be run always, but when we leave a 9 to 5, typically we're now working for ourselves. And a solopreneur needs to understand that you can glorify it by calling yourself a CEO and give yourself cute titles, but ultimately you're a salesperson. You have to get a client, because that's the point of the business. Like, that's job one. So you've got to ask yourself, is that going to be something I can do? Is that something I feel I'm equipped to do? One of the mistakes, though, that I made right at the start, so this, we're talking about January 2014 when I handed in my notice. One of the mistakes I made at the start was it was literally like end of work, next day I'm starting my new job or looking after myself. I was excited, I wanted to jump in. But what I feel in hindsight I should have done was taken at least a month. And if you have the luxury of a bit of money to give yourself that time, a month would have been really helpful to sit, to reflect, to grieve for what you've left, but also to consider the right sense of direction. And the reason why I say this is, what I do now every year is I have a little holiday, at least one, where it's just me on my own. And I go away and I have silence, and I don't really have screens. I don't even read much. I reflect and I have the quiet. When you have the quiet and the space, your mind has an opportunity to actually be heard. It surfaces ideas. And I feel like if we're constantly doing and always moving and always stimulating ourselves, we don't get to actually hear ourselves. And I got by fine, but I remember after about a year thinking, I really wish I'd taken a bit of time just to make sure my alignment was right. Now, I'm not looking for perfection to start, but what I didn't want to do was, what I would rather have done is not start running from the word go, but ask myself, what direction should I run in first, if that makes sense. And so I was just like, whatever I can see, I will react to that rather than, well, what's my plan? But I'm being careful here, Alessandro, because I need to put a big fat asterisk next to this bit of advice, because for many, that is an excuse to procrastinate and to allow perfectionism in, which is incredibly dangerous. And hoping it all works out because you're touching the business each day and thinking about it doesn't necessarily mean you deserve or have earned any results. You have to get on the pitch and get into action. So it's a really difficult question to answer because I really felt, in hindsight, I really wish I'd taken a bit of time to consider things and have a bit of a plan. But I am a hard lean into an action taker, and
Hmm.
I'm a fix it on the way down kind of person at the start. And so I kind of managed to, pivot my way to results by the seat of my pants. But then again, it's so crucial people get the context. My whole world professionally prior to that was being paid to think on my feet. That's selling. And so
Right.
you just got to consider, who really am I? Am I someone who is like that? Or am I someone who wants to be in the back room and probably needs help? So I really need to consider how my approach to market. There's much more I can add, but I just think that's essential to be clear with that. You need to be able to really audit who you are.
It's really interesting what you said. I have a couple of things that I want to follow up on what you said. You put there a lot of great points. And the reason why I ask you this question, the reason why I said that we may have two different ways to, or two different advice for people who want to quit their 9 to 5 is because I was like you. I left my 9 to 5 a couple of times because I thought I had a good idea, I had a good project, and I was sure 100% that this project will become profitable in a couple of
Mm,
months, maximum 6 months. And it didn't happen. After six
yeah,
months, I realized that I was doing something that was going nowhere. I drained completely my savings. I didn't know what to do. And the only option I could see was to find another 9 to 5 because I didn't have money to put food on the table.
yeah,
So the third time that I tried, I did it a little differently. I said, you know what, Alessandro, you tried to do this, to take this leap of faith without any parachute because you thought that your idea was really good. And you ended up draining your entire savings and you ended up miserable, basically. So this time I want to do it a little different. I want to have a safe net. I want to work, as you said, like I want to work on my side hustle while I'm still working on my 9 to 5. And when I will have something that is working and when I'm already profitable and when I'm making the same amount of money that I'm making with my 9 to 5, then I'm going to take the leap. And still, I want
yeah,
to be even more sure. I want to have some savings that I can use in case something goes wrong. And I want to have
yeah,
more than a client because if I have a single client and this person decides to fire me, then what I'm going to do? So I realized that I needed to have some insurances before taking the
yeah,
leap. But I understand your version. Like you say, I'm going to put myself with the back to the wall and I will
yeah.
be a problem solver.
Yeah, and that this is the thing. I just, it's not like I thrive in those scenarios, but I just like those scenarios. I mean, at the start, we can't say anything other than at the start, you've got to be willing to be scrappy. It's going to be scrappy. You might need to make an MVP, like a minimum viable product that can just ship to market to get the ball rolling. I think a really important question to ask ourselves is, despite the big end goal we might have in mind, especially for those of us who are considering quite a robust offering that will require lots of building and so on, we need to ask ourselves, what's the low hanging fruit? It's a really important first question. So
Right.
for me, in 2014, my low hanging fruit. So, the low hanging fruit is what's the easy, accessible money now? And there were two things that stood out. For me, one, I had been training in Taekwondo and instructing in Taekwondo since the mid 2000s. And I'd like medaled at European and national level, and I'd been teaching in Wembley. So, low hanging fruit number one, rent a hall locally, tell people locally, and run a taekwondo school. So I started two academies locally to get some cash in the door because I can do that in my sleep. And so I was like, I could just do that. So that was me no longer doing 9 to 5, but I had that to give me focus and give me a thing to do, but crucially to start getting some money in the door because it's right in front of me. The second thing was, and this is a really big tip for everyone, is I looked at what I did really well and could be paid for. The number one thing you do really well and can be paid for is precisely the job you're leaving. So my first piece of consulting work was the company I'd just left. And if we have a
Oh,
good
that's amazing.
relationship and we don't burn bridges, we should feel it's a really good idea. Because I remember they literally said it would just be really nice to keep you around, like to have you around. So I said, look, I'm on the market. I'm leaving you. But once I had to do my notice period, but after my 3 months notice, I'm like, so have me in 1 day a week as a consultant. And they're like, would we? Oh, that's brilliant. And then the company I'd been headhunted from into that business, I also approached them. Hey, I'm on the market. And I remember they were like, brilliant. So you did so well at this job before you left. Can you come in and train the sales teams? Because you literally helped develop the products.
That's so
Yep, no
smart.
problem. It is. So it's like right in front. This is why one should never burn bridges. So the first two clients I had in 2014 were the last two companies I worked for. And I literally could walk in and do the job instantly. And so it allowed me to get my head around other things. And you see, with Taekwondo teaching and with these things that were like 1 day a week they bought me for, it gave me good money, but crucially, it gave me space and time around that so I could think and focus on building my offering online, which is what I was doing. So that is how I did my transition of sorts. I didn't go to part time. I just went to same company as a consultant and then took it from there. But we should always be looking backwards as well as forwards for where our next piece of business is. Who have you worked with before? Why aren't you at least asking them, like, what would it look like if I helped you out? If you've been in a company more than a couple of years, especially companies where there's a lot of churn, you are really useful. You're an asset. You don't have to be trained. They don't have to look after you because you're just an invoice. And it's just an easy way to slot you in. They don't have to interview almost. You just do it. And in fact, I mean, I did this again. I think it was 2015. There was a business in the city, and the CEO had originally worked at the company I first worked for. So he'd staying in touch. He's like, I need you. I hear you're on the market. Come out, like, let's go. And just got to remember, like, our network from our past, it's amazing over the years how people move into new roles, and you should be tapping that up straight away rather than hoping a new world will serve you. You might as well harvest what you've put out in the previous years.
That's really, really smart. That's really, really smart. And I did something similar when I decided to look for clients. I look for clients regarding the role that I used to have in my 9 to 5. So I used to be a web
Yeah,
designer. I used to be a UX designer. And if you look at this, guys, the reason why I look so good, what you see on screen, is because I have this eye for detail and I want always design to be, perfect. So I have this obsession with design. And when I wanted to stop with my 9 to 5, I thought, you know what? Let's find clients as a consultant, as a web designer, even if I wanted to get into marketing. So I said to myself, I'm going to do the same thing that I'm doing right now on my 9 to 5 because I already know how to do it. I already have the contacts. I will get some clients as a consultant, and this will give me time. Now, this will give me the possibility to quit my 9 to 5, work with this client, so I will be more flexible with my time, and I will have more time to invest into the new business that I want to create. So it's a similar approach, but it's so smart. I'm pretty sure
yeah,
that people here are enjoying this because this is a really great advice. You're going to do the same thing you used to do before, and you can work with the company you used to work. So that's absolutely, absolutely amazing.
But I have to add a bit more, which or just on that, as a healthy warning, you need to have what I call healthy paranoia as well. So my first customer was the one I'd left to start my own job, and they paid me really well to buy me for a day a week. I remember I would go in on a Friday, and that was like the whole day they had for me. Now, it's so easy to, especially if you're working for yourself, to you charge more, obviously, and it's like, wow, I was earning this in a month, and I'm doing it in like 2 days worth of work or something. But what's really important is that we don't get complacent. It's so important to have a bit of healthy paranoia, because essentially your anchor client, so you might have a few, but like the one that gives you the most money, if they leave you, and by the way, all customers eventually leave. It is called entropy. It just happens. Eventually, for whatever reason, they leave or you stop working together, you're in massive trouble. So the moment you've got a customer and it can afford to keep the lights on and you're no longer using your savings, it's the human reaction to go, it's all right now. So you need to kind of work on hunger, and you need to remind yourself that it's essential to get something else. Worst case, you lose that customer, but you've got someone else. Okay. Best case, you keep them both, and so on. So it's so important to get that right. And actually, there's someone listening, watching this, who's gone into chat. Grant, who's mentioned, who I coached many years ago, and he's written. I remember Richard sharing the back to the wall idea. So having your back to the wall, being under a bit of pressure, of having his rent higher than his salary, so he had to book business. This was when I first started work 21 years ago. I deliberately rented a flat I couldn't afford in a nice bit of London. So I had to make sales. Otherwise, I was like seriously in trouble each month. And I think that that's quite extreme. And that hopefully gives a sense of the kind of person I am. But I am suggesting that even if you get to a state of comfort, and comfort, I'm very aware I'm a very privileged individual, but at the same time, comfort is a very, very dangerous place to be, because you go soft, and no matter how great things are going, you have to concern yourself even a little bit with, what am I doing if I lose this state? Because it's only ever a state, it's not forever. So even if you achieve some level of success, what is it I'm replacing it with? Build in redundancy. It was Richard Branson who famously said you should remember to always cover the downside. The downside will come and bite you if you are complacent. So always have that hunger. I'm good. I've got a client now. That's me sorted. I've got space. I can work on my thing. Sure, but you should at least keep one eye open for other things as well. Just a bit of redundancy goes a long way, because that's your mental state. You know, the last thing you need is for a heavy bill to come in for your household, and then you happen to lose that customer at the same time, and now you're massively stressed. Okay, you need to build a war chest of savings, and you also need to be in a place where you have an abundance level of customers. And abundance doesn't mean hundreds. It means enough that if you lose one or the other or the third, you still can afford to live and get by. It is stunning what we can live off if we really have to, but it's important to have that built in.
I totally agree with that. Yes. The We already know that being an entrepreneur and starting a new business is stressful, because you have to put many hats at the beginning. You have to do a lot of things at the same time, especially if you're coming from being an employee where you are doing a lot of things because your boss telling you what to do, and you don't have to think too much, or at least you don't have to come up with all the ideas and solve all the problems. When you start a new business, you have to solve a lot of problems, and you have to become this problem solver. So you have to think fast, and you have to figure out how to overcome some situations that could be really, really hard to overcome.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you on this. It's better to have a safety net, so you're gonna reduce a little the stress that you will eventually have. And before talking about clients, because we're talking a lot about finding clients, working with clients, so I would like to have your recipe on, especially with LinkedIn, because you're really present on LinkedIn, like how to use the platform to get clients. I want to ask you a question that I read here in the comments from Vinay, because I think that it's important to address it. Vinay wrote, how can you identify how can you identify when you're ready to take the leap into entrepreneurship? Did you figure it out, Richard, when you were ready to become an entrepreneur, or it was just, I don't know, you just felt it? What happened there?
This question always comes up because people are like, give me a sign. Because then if I have a definite sign, I know I can't get it wrong because, hey, I waited for the green light. And that definite green light validates that I will be making the right decision. Sadly, life's not like that. And the right time is, we're going to be really careful here because I want to give the right kind of advice. The right time is different for everyone. I definitely knew I always wanted to run my own thing. Even when I was like a boy, like a teenager, I always wanted to run my own thing. And I've always struggled with being told what to do, unless it's by someone who is like sheer excellence. I really struggle with that as well. So that was always in my DNA. And to be really frank, in 2012 and 2013, I had some significantly traumatic things happen to me personally. Loss of loved ones, really hardcore things happening all in one year in 2012, which meant a massive mental implosion in 2013. Overwork in order to, try and distract myself, put me in a really bad place. So I was at this point, this kind of pinch point where I had to change something. And the change that we decided on was, my wife and I decided on was, I will go do my own thing. So I had this heavy implosion, and I needed to change my life, and that was my set of circumstances. For many, what I encounter when I speak to them, they have a situation where they're not really digging the work they're doing, but they're kind of all right. And so that is always a question mark, because it's like, do I leave the safety, albeit not great for me, and go for the riskier, seemingly riskier potential upside? That's scary. Now, to answer this question, it's critical you understand you'll never, ever be fully ready, because you don't know what ready feels like because you're not doing it yet. That's really important to understand. You never quite know what's going to be required of you. And as you rightly said a minute ago, Alessandro, the way I look at it is, you need to be a bit of a unicorn in that first year. You've got to do everything. Although the first thing I ever bought was an accountant, which is the best investment ever. Get someone doing that kind of stuff for you. But I really feel it's like, it's going to be hard. It will be harder than you think. It will cost more than you think. It will take longer than you think. That's always the case, because humans tend to project the best outcome when they're thinking about trying something fun and exciting. It's going to be tough. You will get curveballs. So if you're probably about okay, go for it, is my opinion. And also, we're back to this point of, who are you really? If you're the kind of person who is a worrier and someone who's in their head and who's always like, oh, I don't know if it can work, and a perfectionist, you need to recognize that you're going to take longer, because your biggest speed bump is going to be how you look at yourself and how you speak to yourself and your mental state. If you're the other end of the spectrum and you have like this audacious self-belief, you tend to be all right to start with. So it's just, you've got to audit yourself, and that will help you make a decision. But the answer tends to be along the lines of, if you probably are about okay, do it. Not when is the right time, it's when is probably about okay time. If you have a couple or a few months of savings, if you kind of have a sense of direction, if you probably know you could speak to some people and get yourself a client, then you're probably in a good space. It's a lot of gray area. And I'm saying that because the fact is, even if you felt right, you're still going to have things like blind spots come up that you have to navigate. And I don't think any of that answer is going to be a surprise to anyone. It's just those people wanting to transition out, they don't want to hear it. Because what they want to hear is, oh, when X equals Y, that is when you go, because it will all be okay. It never works like that. And the thing is, you might have a rocket of a first year and you're like, that wasn't that hard. And then you miss the thing and then it starts getting really difficult. So curveballs are part of the territory. And again, as I said earlier, you need to be willing to be scrappy because it's all on you. You can't cry your way out of it. You can't have days off and still get paid as we get if we're in 9 to 5. But I will say, to finish this answer, it's deemed in one's head to be the safe bet to stay at work. But unless you're the CEO, and even then it's not the case, you tend to be in a riskier position in many ways if you're in a 9 to 5. Because how do you know you're not going to get laid off? How do you know you're not going to be the next round of redundancies?
True.
How do you know? And I've had it before in another company I remember I worked at where they absorbed my role. And I'm like, I go on holiday and I come back and you move me on. I'm like, you just don't know. It's risky as anything. But when you're in control of your own thing, it's all on you. But hey, it's all on you, which is really cool. So heavy hangs the head that wears the crown. You get the opportunity to de-risk your position, but the responsibility, the trade-off is the responsibility is yours to make sure you continue keeping that business going. So some food for thought in there, and hopefully that covers enough of the audience.
I think so. I think so. And, sometimes it's even our responsibility to show people who want to take this leap that it's not as easy as it looks. And we try to, and I understand it's a mistake that we usually do, that we make it look like, okay, you're doing something that you like, it's gonna be fun, it's gonna work really fast. If you do the right things, you will have success pretty quickly. Usually it's not like this. I mean, there is no secret recipe. This is not math. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you do. You will never know when you will get good results. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
you will get results in a couple of months. Maybe it will take you a couple of years to get results and be finally happy with what you're doing. So it should be in our responsibility to show the people who want to create a new business that, look, even if you hire the best coach out there, even if you're following the best strategy, even if you're doing everything you're supposed to do to make it work, there is no certainty that you will get results quickly. So try to be ready for it, be strong for it, be ready. And if this is not going to come fast, if results don't come fast, be patient, be disciplined,
Mm-hmm.
trust the process, be patient, because this is the only way to deal with this. You have to be strong, you have to be ready. If you're not ready, at the first difficulty that you will find, at the second stumbling block that you will find, you're gonna give up, you're gonna lose your motivation, and eventually you will
Yeah.
say to yourself, maybe I'm not fit for this journey. So
Well,
try to understand the fact.
that's such a
Go ahead.
crucial point, and people should be looking within themselves because what you've just described there, if your natural reaction is that sounds exhilarating, I'm excited, at least I'm willing to embrace. That sounds kind of fun to have the curveballs and the unknown. Then it's for you. But if it petrifies you, because you can't, you get some people who love surprises, some people who hate surprises. Yet people who I love the unknown and the unpredictability because I'm a glass half full kind of, actually, I'm a glass massively spilling over kind of guy. So what I do is I look at my day rather than going like, oh my God, like what could go wrong today? It's unpredictable. My response is like, by the end of today, I might have another 10 grand. You never know. Like it could be anything that comes in my lap, and that's exciting. And when there's a challenge, so bring it on. This is the game I chose to play. So if you are exhilarated by that idea of the unknown and the unpredictable, it's for you. If you're petrified, if it's the wrong kind of being petrified, if you're like, I'm going to be frozen by it, then it may be something to reconsider. And I think a lot of people say, this is probably one of the biggest takeaways. A lot of people say the hardest part is trying to get customers, but it's actually not. The hardest part is holding your nerve.
Oh
You
yeah.
said about being patient, and I helped help coach someone out of corporate recently, and she's now done about 2 years of running her own thing, and she's crushing it. She's on like $250,000 a year. Absolutely thrilled for her. And her biggest thing was holding her nerve when the deals aren't coming. And like you rightly said, like you've got to trust the process, know that if you're doing the right things, and it's like being so real with yourself, not looking at maybes, looking at yes or no in my pipeline kind of thing. It's just like if you can manage yourself and self talk, I've got this. Really? Am I not getting another sale? I'll be okay. I'm doing the right thing. Hold your nerve. Don't get so frantic and like worried when you know you're doing the right thing. Then you're probably going to be fine. That's the hardest bit to conquer is our self talk. But when you're in your head cheerleading, not delusion, but like cheerleading and like backing yourself, you know you got this, and saying to yourself, I'm good, I'm all good, I've got this, and not delusion again, but like knowing if I do the hard yards, I will get the result. It's so important, way more important than am I going to get a sale, because that comes as a product of the right kind of mindset.
Absolutely. And if I can add one thing to this, and then we move to the client conversation, if I can add one thing, word of advice, surround yourself with the right people. We are really lucky nowadays that you can find people who can motivate you, inspire you, support you at any time, any hour of the day. Looking at the past when we didn't have the possibility to connect with everyone around the world, this was really difficult because you had to find your tribe, your community around your area, or you have to find people you can meet personally. But right now, if you don't have friends, if you don't have colleagues that can inspire you, or people that are doing the same thing that you're doing, so you feel a little less alone, find your tribe online. Find a couple of people who can inspire you, motivate you. Actually, I when I started with the business that I have right now, one thing that helped me a lot was to find my inner circle. I found 4, 5 people I could hang out with every week, once per week on Zoom, and we were just sharing what we were doing. We were creating our business together. Everyone had their own business, but we were sharing what we were doing, and we were open to feedback of the other people. And this helps you because when you're an entrepreneur, it feels really lonely. It looks like that you're doing everything by yourself, but there are so many other people out there doing the same thing, trying to do the same thing you're trying to do. So find a couple of people like this, meet them consistently, get their feedback, share what you're doing, listen to what they're doing. You're going to learn, you're going to support each other, and you're going to keep the motivation high because, as Richard just said, this is the hardest part to be strong, to stay strong, and go on with the process, even more difficult than finding clients. But that said, okay, let's get more into getting clients, okay? Because this is what you did. And I wanted to ask you a question earlier because you said that it should be your priority or one of your priorities to find clients because obviously you have a
Yeah,
business. You don't have a
yeah,
hobby, right? You have a business and you
yeah.
need clients to fuel your business and to keep it alive and thriving. So let me ask you a question, Richard. First of all, did you start your business using LinkedIn or you started in another way?
Yeah, so 2014, I started on Facebook. So I was doing this, but on Facebook. I was posting. Frankly, it was rubbish, the post. But hey, I was posting things to start my funnel and attract. Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. There was no brand. It was like, oh man, I cringe. I would do like a Henry Ford quote. It was like my first day in marketing kind of thing. But the thing is, what I knew was because my world before had been cold calling and getting money from people on an unsolicited way, in an unsolicited way, who didn't want it and could live without it. My thing was like navigating that incredibly hard, nuanced world. So when I go to Facebook and there's a bunch of entrepreneurs who are all broke and the theme hasn't changed, and they're all trying really hard and they're really good at a thing. They've got talent. That's the hard bit. They've got talent and they're trying to get customers, but they don't know what they're doing. Then speaking to them was like, it was like, wow, this, and I'm really careful using the word easy, but it was like, this is so easy because I'm like, I just need to interact with them. But it was Facebook first, 2014. 2016, I then added Instagram because, social platforms. But end of 2017, I started looking at LinkedIn. And then January 2018, I started LinkedIn. And I remember it all just, it was fine. I made my first 100 grand off Facebook. But LinkedIn was it all clicked into this kind of complete step change because suddenly I was relevant. I'm helping businesses make business on the number one business to business platform. So I was kicking myself, I hadn't done it earlier. But on Facebook and Instagram, it's pure social. People are, here's a picture of me on the beach, and then there's me trying to help people with business. So it worked a bit, but by multiples, LinkedIn really stepped up because the context was there. And so soon after, I binned Facebook and Instagram because what's the point? And so then doing LinkedIn really well and migrating out of that to an email list has been ample for originally me and a lifestyle business, just giving myself money and buying houses and stuff like that and having kids. And now building a team and enjoying building a proper company. It's just logical to be in this space because people are contextually in the right state when you're speaking to them on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's true. So would you advise your younger self to start straight on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think I would have. 2014, I don't quite remember what LinkedIn would offer. I'm pretty sure it was like a status update is all you could do, which was short. And I think they had soon after it was white papers, which became documents, which is now known fondly as carousels,
Hmm.
but like a PDF. It wasn't till late in 2017 that they allowed video to be uploaded, and then everything else kind of came after that. And here we are doing live streams now. But I do think that I probably would, because anywhere you go, it's just people. And so you might as well go, this is about low hanging fruit again. It's like, where is the most accessible place to generate business? Well, as I said to someone recently who is a local acupuncturist who asked, should I be on LinkedIn? I was like, hell no. There's no point. You don't need a global audience as a thought leader in acupuncture when you're trying to get local customers. Get on Facebook, do ads, get on Google ads, do that. But if
Hmm.
you're doing anything international and it's business to business or even B2C, but as a business service,
Yeah,
LinkedIn makes most sense because you've got an incredible amount of action there. There's a lot of people who are active on it. And crucially, the best part is it's a very generous algorithm because the majority, wild majority, like basically everyone, is doing nothing. As in, they're not making noise. There's no posting. Most people aren't
that's true.
posting it. It's like a few million people out of a billion are actually bothering to post. And most posts are dreadful.
Yeah,
Hey, buy my stuff. Or look, we just did this thing. We won an award and no one asked. No one cares. So no one's even
yeah.
looking at most of the content. And so we're still early, even in 2025, to be posting on LinkedIn. And so I should be on commission, shouldn't I, from evangelizing about the website.
That's true. The reason why I started using LinkedIn really late, and I regret that. I should have started way earlier, is because I had this idea that the same thing that you said, no one is using LinkedIn at the moment. No one looks at posts. So if I'm going to post on LinkedIn, no one will pay attention to it. Like I had all these misconceptions. And that's the reason why I started with YouTube and then Instagram. Like it's more or less the same
Yeah.
thing that you've done. But let me rephrase the question that I asked you. Would you suggest someone starting right now? Imagine that they have a business. So they have a business and they're looking for customers or clients, or they want to deal with other businesses, so B2B. Would you suggest them to use LinkedIn straight away or not?
Yeah, I absolutely would. Unless you're selling, like my brother-in-law's a locksmith, so he deals with people in the local area, then he doesn't need it. But anyone else selling a business service, you should be on LinkedIn because they're all there. And if you're selling premium services, so high ticket business services, um, the buyers you will do deals with, so the top people, the CEOs, the managing directors, the senior decision makers, they're all here. Now, what they are not doing, because it's not culturally what you do on LinkedIn, what they're not doing is writing comments on everyone's posts, but they are looking. And the beautiful feature of LinkedIn is that if someone looks at your post, they're probably going to be curious and click on your name. And when they click on your name, they're on your profile, and that is logged. So if I look at my profile views, it will say at 12 o'clock today, Alessandro looked at your profile. Here is his job, and here's a link to his profile. I can see everyone who's looking at me. You can't do it on any other platform. Buyers, senior premium buyers, look. They're fondly called lurkers. They will lurk in the background. They look, and then they're gone. But you've now got an in. Hi, Alessandro. I just saw you looked at my profile today. I just want to say thank you so much. Was there anything that caught your eye? And often they're like, yeah, I loved your post. I just thought I'd have a look. Now I've got a conversation. And it's consistent. It's been 7 years consistent that I get the biggest deals from people who are lurking in the background, looking at the profile. Microsoft is one of the biggest companies on the planet. In June, they literally sent me a message saying, hi, Richard, we've been watching you, which is normally a worry if Microsoft says something like that to you. But they're like, we've been watching you. The new Surface Pro, you know, their tablet and their AI called Copilot, they're like, we're promoting it in this particular way to like IT directors. We need someone for the UK to put some posts out and do a review on LinkedIn. Will you be our guy? I'm like, yeah, sure. So they've been watching in the background. And so it's just so important to remember that you might be staring at your comments on your posts and going like, where's the deals? Meanwhile, they're passing right under your nose, looking at the profile or in your inbox as well. So it's such a gold mine. It's never been easier. It's insane how much opportunity there is. And the problem is people think a lead is someone going, hi, can I buy your thing? And so they get all upset. But it's like, you only need a few people to even look at you to have a conversation starter now. You don't have to do cold outreach. You look at the people who you've attracted by being the thought leader or the expert or the knowledge center that you are.
You talked about people lurking your profile, like visiting your profile, taking a look at what. So let's get into the specific because I think that some
Yeah.
people want to know what you do or what you, how you started with, how you started getting results with LinkedIn. So do you think, okay, tough question. Do you think you should post on a daily basis on LinkedIn to get results, or can you start with a little lighter approach?
So at the start, how many customers have you got? None. So you have loads of free time. So post every day. You have enough time to post every day. It's laughable, Alessandro, when people go, oh, I don't have any time, but I need some clients. Like, what are you even doing with your time each day? If you've got no customers, you've got loads of time. And here's a really good way to do it. If I have a slot on Wednesday between 10 and 12 a.m., so 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., that I want to fill with a customer, and I currently don't have a customer in that slot, so use that slot to write posts and attract people and get into the DMs. It's as simple as that. But the answer to your question is yes, you should post daily. And you do have time. And the question people ask is well, aren't people going to get bored of your content? A, no, because they're not looking at you much yet. And B, no, because those that are into the thing you're talking about will happily binge it. So, for instance, on TV at the moment, there's this series, The Day of the Jackal. My wife and I love it. We have binged the whole thing because we can't get enough of it. We're not like happy to wait to the next week. We waited and then we watched it all. Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, people smashed the whole thing. And it's the same here. If you're saying something stimulating, people do not have a problem with you showing up again tomorrow and being equally as useful. So there's a ridiculous narrative going around that you shouldn't post too much because it will fatigue the audience. What does fatigue the audience is if you're selling at them every day. Now they're turned off. What we need to see is you are the expert we need on a daily basis, because if you look at buyer psychology, what's really important to understand is that frequency of seeing you creates familiarity. And if we have familiarity, that is the seed for trust. So we naturally trust people that we have seen a lot of. It is how humans work. And that's why we might trust, as an example, a celebrity that we've never met, because we've seen that person a lot. And of course, they need to be in the kind of roles, if they're an actor, for instance, that are trustworthy roles, that we like them and so on. You know, Harry Potter would be trusted far more than Draco Malfoy because of the roles they play. It's kind of an interesting one, but I don't want to digress too much. But the point is, post every day, and crucially recognize no one cares yet because you're just starting out. So whilst you're posting daily stuff that's stimulating to try and draw a crowd, simultaneously go to where someone's already done the hard work and there is already a crowd, and show up there in the conversations as well. Imagine the visualization of this is, imagine you're in a playground at school. You're standing on your own saying great things, but no one can hear you. Over there's a conversation with all the cool kids saying great things and everyone's listening. So say your great stuff, but also go over there from time to time and interact as well. If I want to work with people who are leaving their 9 to 5 and I'm starting out and it's day one, I should probably spend some time in orbit around your network too. Not spamming and selling people, just being part of the conversation so people can say, I'm here for Alessandro, but hey, this guy Richard keeps coming up with good ideas. Who is he? Profile click, and I'm away. You see what I mean? So it's go get your audience, but also broadcast regularly. Once a week, or how little can I get away with, is precisely the attitude of failure.
Absolutely. I love this. I love the fact that you need to be visible. There is one thing that I repeat over and over and over to my clients, that you don't need to have the best business out there. You don't need to have the best product. You don't need to have the best delivery. You don't need to have the best content. You need to be visible. You need to be more visible than your competitors. If you're there, obviously, if your content is good, it doesn't have to be incredible, it doesn't have to be the best, but if your content is good and there is value in your content, and you're there over and over, you're consistent, you're disciplined, you show up on their newsfeed, you offer to them something that they need to read and watch, at the end they will trust you, because trust is something that you create just with time. You have to spend time with your audience. The more time you spend with them, actually the more time they spend with your content, the more probability there is that that person will become a client or a customer. At the end, you have to create trust first. And then, as Richard says, you have to start a conversation, because the number of your clients and customers is related to the number of conversations that you start on a daily basis. Yeah. So this is not rocket science. You know, we tend to think that social media are something different from conversations that you may have in the real world. But you will do the same if you want to make sales and you want to get customers. You try to speak to your prospects as much as possible and give them content in the real world, and then you go for the sale. You don't sell straight away. You don't do it in the real world. You don't do it on social media. You need to create the trust and the connection first. So I absolutely agree with you, Richard, on the fact that you have time, or at least you will find the time to create content. And even if it's not the best content, you will get better with practice. So practice, 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 and let's get to the sale. So now you are creating content. Now you have some people who are paying attention. Now you have some people who are visiting your profile. How can you start a conversation with them that will lead to a sale, or will lead to, I don't know, make that person become a lead?
Yeah, so we need to consider what you've just been describing here, and this is your, like, if people should be taking notes. This is the note to take, which is take cues from the offline world. Meaning, how would you interact with someone new in the offline world? And the answer to that is, it's small questions. It's what's in front of you. So it's the commonality that you're sharing. Mutual commonality means the things you're both experiencing now. Well, what's the mutual commonality? Well, someone looked at my profile, so it's the thing I should focus on as my entry point to the conversation. Now, if we look at this, is just for the nerds of us, if you look at how conversations are structured, it's not a focus on being efficient. It's a focus on interaction. If I was trying to be efficient, I would write a long first message and I would say, hey, nice to meet you. I saw you looked at my profile. Here's a bit about me. What challenges have you got? By the way, here's a link to my latest podcast interview, and they don't care at all. It's none of your business and they're not interested. That's me trying to be efficient and handle it all. Being effective at building interactions means we understand that in conversation, it's about back and forth. It's two people. So the two rules are this. One, ask things that are reasonable, because things that are reasonable don't put pressure on them to respond. And online, if you put pressure on someone to respond to something they don't want to, they just ghost you and you just lost. So that's crucial. So reasonable things. And two, one thing at a time. Your job at the start is to begin a conversation, not to try and get a sale. If you get there, good for you. So what does it look like? The reasonable thing to say when someone looked at my profile is firstly to thank them for doing it and then ask what caught their eye. Thanks for looking at my profile, Alessandra. I really appreciate it. Hope you're well. Is there anything that caught your eye, or what made you look at it? Or thanks for voting in my poll. Thanks for liking my post. Thanks for sharing my post. Thanks for commenting my post. I really appreciate it. What made you decide to do it out of interest? You're calling them on the thing they just did. It's right in front of you, and it's a very reasonable thing to ask. You just looked at my shop, is what you're asking. Is you're basically saying, by looking at my profile, what was the reason why? What made you decide to click on it? It's entirely reasonable. And so they're going to respond back with, oh, simple answer. No problem. Now our next job is to ask a what or a why style question. What do you think led that to happen? Or why do you feel that mattered to you? Or one of those two is easy to ask. And what we're doing is we're taking the thing they said and we're drilling down a bit more. So you focus on the thing in front of you. Thanks for looking at my profile. What made you decide to look at it? Or why did you look at it? Oh, thanks, Richard. Yeah, it was cool. It was because I was interested in the work you do in whatever. Why does that, why do you feel that's important? Or thanks for sharing that. What in particular about that matters to you? Ask yourself, what would the why and the what based question be, and pick the best one. Do it once more. And now they're going to give you detail. People don't give detail in the first answer. They do a bit more on the second. They really do on the third. If you ask any more, they will now say, sorry, what's with all the questions? Or they'll just not bother anymore and go. So what we've got now, though, is this person speaking to us, giving us some answers, explaining what caught their eye, which is entirely reasonable. And then it's for you to say, well, look, that's what I do. Like, I help with that. I remember one of the first deals I did, I literally said, well, why aren't I helping you? Oh, it's because they're like, oh, because I need help with this thing. Why don't I help? Should we grab a call? I'm happy to share a few bits of some ideas, things that have worked for me. Can you do tomorrow at this time? That'd be cool. They tend to say yes. Here's why. In the olden days, when I used to do cold calling, they didn't want to know because I was calling out of the blue and I was interrupting their day and I had no emotional ownership over them. They weren't like, oh, cool, it's Richard. Whereas now they've been looking at my content maybe several times. So just think every one of those is a touch point. Now they're looking at my profile. They consciously chose to look at my profile. They consciously chose to reply to each of these comments or each of these questions. None of which are about me. They're all about what they were doing and all completely reasonable. And then, so it's logical that they're like, sure, I'd love to explore further because it's the thing I personally have volunteered that I might need help with. Does it work every time? Of course not. But does it work more than going out cold to them? Hell yes, it does. And I just think it's the same as what we do in the offline world. And I'll just finish with this great example. If you and I are sitting next to each other at a wedding and we don't know each other, we just sat at a table of loners without partners, Alessandro, then we'll both be like, so how do you know the bride or groom? Which is the commonality we have in front of us. And you'll say, oh, I went to university with the bride. Cool. I did too. How? We didn't know each other. And then we're off. We're away. So talk about the thing that's right in front of you. That's how we start conversations. And once we stay on topic, it's so easy to then just say like this, well, why didn't I help you with that? Now, obviously, because of time, I can't go through all of the other variations and all the elegance you could add to it. But in essence, that's what I did 10 times a day on Facebook to start with. And people are like, yeah, I'd love a call. I need help. I'm lonely and can't do it. And then you're off. You see what I mean?
That's amazing. There are so many other things that we can talk about this, and I hope that we will find the time in the next weeks to have another call and get more into details. Because for the sake of time, we can't go on for too long. I wanted to keep this 1 hour long, and there is so
That's
much
cool.
more content that we can cover. So let me ask you a question, Richard, and then we can absolutely organize a new interview in 2025. Maybe I hope so. By the way, guys, if you're watching this, if you're enjoying this, please send me a connection on LinkedIn because we have a lot of great interviews in the next weeks. We will have Leah Turner, we will have Sam Brown, we will have a lot of people that will come up here on the show. So send me a connection so you're not going to miss them. I want to ask you, Richard, what's going on right now with the art of sale? What's going on in your business at the moment?
Thank you for asking. There's a load of good stuff. The Art of Sell is my baby at the moment. I'm so happy. The team are crushing it. We've got a load of people joining every month. You can join basically. We allow 25 new people in, and honestly, so every week we have a masterclass from an external speaker who's like really been there, done it, and I'm still buzzing, to be honest. Last night we had a guy called Nate Harvey. And so, at the start of a talk, you give your credentials, who you've worked with. He had a show reel. He's like, so for instance, here's the Stranger Things and Metallica thing that I did. Here's the thing I did with Spotify and Coca-Cola. Like, he led these projects, and it's just mind blowing the quality of some people out there. So it was amazing having him talk. And we've had like Professor of Economics. I've had the sales trainer from Accenture. It just goes on. There's so many amazing speakers. So we've got in January, we've got a mental fitness coach who works with Nike and their athletes. All this stuff to kind of give us all of the topics and knowledge and education we need around effective selling, from mindset to technique. And you can probably sense from my energy, I absolutely love it. So we've got workshops every week as well, and it's just fun to go and help people. And literally daily now, like I had one this morning, there's someone in the community saying, this question Richard told me to say got me 3 sales this week. And I just love it because we're being tactical. We're showing people how to be elegant about what to do. And they're getting results rather than me sharing war stories. We're being like really helpful. And I can't get enough of it, man. I'm really enjoying it. And it's just, I'm just excited about bringing more people in the new year. So thank you for letting me go on about it.
I can hear from your voice that you're really, really excited about what's coming up, and you really like what you're
Thank you.
doing. Well, anyway, Richard, thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to have this interview. As I said, I want to continue this conversation in the future. So in 2025, we definitely need to talk about LinkedIn more and how to get clients more because people are leaving a lot of comments here. They have a lot of questions, but we don't have the time to address all of them. Thank you again for being here. And if people want to find you, obviously they can send you a connection on LinkedIn. Where else can they find you?
LinkedIn's probably the best place, but if you want to go further, there's therichardmoore.com. But
Hmm.
yeah, on LinkedIn, on my profile, you can click on, I think it's visit my store is the button they call it. And that takes you through to more info on the art of sell. But otherwise, just DM me. And as a thank you to your audience and for you for having me, I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone has in messages by way of thanks. So no problem at all.
Amazing. So guys, just leave your questions, leave your feedback. write in the comments. Even if this live is over, just let's continue the conversation because it's not over. We can keep talking there. And as we talk so far, it's all about connections. It's all about conversations. So let's keep the conversation on and let's have all the questions addressed. Again, Richard, thank you so much. I can't wait to see what's coming up for the Art of Sell, and I'll see you next time in the next interview.
Thank you. You too. Cheerio.
And see you all, guys. See you, everyone. Thank you very much for being here on this interview. I'll see you around on LinkedIn, and I want you to be part of the Escape 95 Club. So stay with us. We have a lot of great interviews coming up. I'll see you around. Bye for now.